Although we take the two-party system for granted in the United States, two parties are actually the exception in democracies around the world. The system of proportional representation, which all the countries colored on this map in some form have, a proportional representation system tends to lead to a multi-party system. The United States has what we call a first past the post or single elector district system. In such systems, there's a large number of legislative districts, congressional districts and the like, but each one is going to be represented only by one person. There's a tendency for this to lead to two major parties dominating because in a first past the post system, a voter usually feels that a vote for a third or fourth party candidate is just a wasted vote because they're not going to win. By contrast, in a proportional representation system, if a party gets about 10% of the votes, it'll get about that percentage of the representatives. So even a vote for a less popular party wouldn't be wasted in a proportional system. It has a downside as well. Our system, first past the post, produces a majority government almost all the time, even if no party actually has the support of a majority of voters. That's bad if you believe the government ought to reflect the actual preferences of a majority of voters, reflect them as accurately and precisely as possible. But it's good in that it ensures, or virtually ensures, that there'll be some ruling group. Now, ideally, in proportional representation, some governing coalition can be formed. This coalition will have a platform which takes parts of each of the party's priorities, in theory. And it usually works that way, but not always. Sometimes, no combination of parties that add up to more than 50%, no combination of parties can agree to be a governing coalition, and in that case, no functioning government can be formed. Or a small party, a party that represents the views of just a small number of the voting population, ends up having the tipping point. If there are two large parties with about the same amount of support, but neither of which is up to 50%, then that small party in here, the kill the kittens party, is needed by either of those two major parties, needed to be part of their governing coalition, and they're probably going to have a disproportionate amount of influence, disproportionate to their actual voting strength. If only there was some way for people to vote for the party or candidate that they really want, but we could still be assured of a majority party so that there would be a government. In ranked choice voting, a voter picks a first choice, a second choice, etc. If any candidate or any party gets more than 50% on the first ballot of the first choice votes, then that candidate becomes the winner. But if no one has 50%, then the least popular of the candidates is knocked off the ballot. The votes of everyone who had originally picked that candidate, all of those voters are switched to whoever their second choice is. And once again, the votes are counted, and again we see if any candidate has more than 50% of the votes. And that process can keep going on and will keep going on until somebody has more than 50% of the votes and is declared the winner. So there's no need for voters to go to the polls a second time. Instant runoff is used in countrywide elections in Australia, India, and Ireland. And it's been used in the United States. But there is resistance to it from politicians. Why Democratic and Republican politicians would be against a system that might allow third parties more power, I can't imagine.
Yeah, why?